I'm pleased to introduce Kálmán Árpád Kovács. He is from Budapest, Hungary. As a dedicated historian and researcher, his work focuses on the religious and cultural history of Central and Eastern Europe. Welcome, Árpád.
Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, if we take a brief look at the religious map of the Habsburg Empire in the 1770s, as we can construct it from the state 100 years later, we can see from west to southeast a transition from a Roman Catholic to a Greek Orthodox ocean with some Protestant islands. These Protestant islands were only sporadically present in the west, but in the east, Protestantism could likewise form clear-cut territories in Transylvania or in Transylvania. The Habsburgs were committed Roman Catholics. Their sectarian politics were heavily influenced by several factors. The so-called territorial principle meant that each land or kingdom had its own constitutions. In this context, constitution was identical to a historical construction of state rooted in the previous centuries. The Constitution of Austria or Bohemia, for example, prohibited all Catholic, non-Catholic denominations after 1600 and 1625. In contrast to these, three other Christian religions were tolerated in the Kingdom of Hungary. The toleration of the Jews was another question. And after 1606 and 1681, one other was tolerated in the Banat after 1716, and three others were accepted, and two others were tolerated in the Principality or Grand Duchy of Transylvania. In this context, acceptance and tolerance meant two completely different legal situations. The first inherited a stable embedding in the constitution. The second was a fluid status that included some temporary benefits for and from the state. These people were taxpayers, craftsmen, and recruits for the state, whose situation could be counterbalanced with religious tolerance. It was a great drawback for the Habans that they didn't provide recruits for the state, for example. According to the parliamentary inarticulate privileges of Gábor Bethlen, the so-called Moravian Brethren or Hutterites enjoyed local tolerance from 1622 onwards. This is how the community of the Alvinzer Anabaptists was created. The status of local tolerance was naturally the weakest position under all present dominations. The several religious exertations were public only in the case of acceptance. That meant that only the accepted denominations had their own churches and schools wherein they could defend their own anti-Catholic teachings without insult of Catholics respectively. Tolerance meant in this context only private religious practice without these rights and privileges. Every confession of early modern ages advocated the so-called magistratal principle. That meant that the state was also responsible for religious issues in its confessional manner. A legal article about the prohibition of the so-called religious innovation existed in Transylvania from 1544. This rule defended the the accepted denominations, their teachings, institutions, rights, and privileges from the state, from the other accepted and non-accepted denominations. The so-called déskomplanation, that meant here compromise, and termin, that meant here judgment, occurred in 1638. The Calvinist central state power at that time took advantage of a dispute among the Unitarians. The so-called Sabbatists were declared as sectarians. Those who had probably refused the official Unitarian confession before 1635 were imprisoned until the time of their conversion. Officially, the prisoners could have converted to one of the accepted denominations, but only Calvinist pastors could visit them according to a princely command. The Habsburgs interpreted the Day's arrangement from 1638 as a predominant religion existing in the country, which after their absolute taking of power in 1691 and 1716 would be Roman Catholicism, of course. The Habsburgs supported two proportional directives. The so-called 1/20th rule meant that a 5% quota in the entire population could entail local dominance. The 1/3, 2/3 rule meant that if Catholics outnumbered the others by 1.5 times locally, it was worthwhile try to eliminate their religious practices. I have made some slides and notes to background information. So sectarian policy was such a tiny part of the Transylvanian public administration of the Habsburgs. We have got a 22-item list from military, finances, parliamentary issues, legal questions, taxation, commerce, maintaining, etc., etc. The religious negotiations were divided into two in Transylvania, and all issues are furthermore specified. I could also show you a 71 item and 131 item list. The so-called recatholization issues would only be one item on these extended lists. The Habsburgian was an absolutistic state. Everything was arranged according to the emperor's decision. So many institutions, Catholic Commission, State Council, etc., and people were involved that these imperial resolutions took place. Every time I mention one of these institutions or people, you can check the you could check the location. You could check the location and of these institutions and persons in imperial decisions making. If it's possible, I will show the adequate images of these peoples of these people. The central position in this system had the Kaunitz founding Council of State, the Council of Council of State, and Kaunitz, and which the Council of State was a supreme coordinating organ of Viennese court at that time. The foundation of the State Council changed the public administration of Transylvania in the court in a fundamental way. The previous ministerial conferences were replaced by the duo of the State Council and the Transylvania Religious Commission, a later religious department. So here. And what happened between these two organs was important. The State Council had at this time not even a Hungarian member, and the presidents of the religious commissions were Bartenstein, Bartenstein, who was a Catalyzed Imperial German, Breuner, I have no image of him now, and he was a lower Austrian and Niederösterreicher, or Blumegen. Blumegen, who was a Moravian German. The Moravian brethren had Hutterites and the Anabaptists of Alvins, the so-called transmigrants under influence of Herrenhuter occurred 16 times in the circulation in front of the Council of State over the course of 12 years between 1761 and 1772. I will have now time to speak in deeper details only about the crucial events between 1761 and 1764, as they were seen in the view site of the Council of State. So these are the 16 numbers, and State Council number 331 from the year 1761. This number contradicts Helmut Klima's assertion from the year 1915 that the Viennese court could hardly have been informed about the Transylvanian Anabaptist affair before 1763. That's not right. The number started, this number in 1761 started a 12-year debate between the pairs of State Minister Daun and the State Councillor Stupan. Stupan, about Stupan I have now no image, and between the state councillors Bory and Blumegen. So Blumegen. Here's Blumegen. And Blumegen became later state minister. The previous pair proposed a resolution that the distributions among Protestants was favorable. Any Anabaptists could be tolerated in Transylvania if they remained calm and did not want to seduce, that meant here, convert anyone else to their religion. There were legal rules that prohibited the seduction of Catholics. Otherwise, the death penalty could be also imposed. The later ones proposed, as of Blumegen and Bourrier, proposed a resolution. It was that it was legal to hold arrested people in prison. This was a hint on the imperial edicts about the guidelines of the so-called religious education from the years 1752 and 1754. These orders expressed that religious education could last only 2 weeks and only 6 weeks, and could be extended only for another 6 weeks in hope of conversion. After these maximum 3 months, the stubborn resistant should be transmigrated, forcibly deported under arrest to the mountainous towns of Upper Hungary, nowadays in Slovakia, or to the Saxonian royal soil in Transylvania, where the Lutheran confession tolerated, respectively accepted. This number refers to a protocol, one of the last of the ministerial conferences in Transylvanian issues. I saw this protocol somewhere in the A97 or A98, but I overlooked it 25 years ago, and now I have not had enough time to search through the cancellery previous cabinet files to find it. We know with certainty that the Saxon Lutheran Bishop Hanner arrested 3 Austrian transmigrant women, the Corinthian Austrian transmigrant women. They were accused of not only having converted from Lutheranism to Anabaptism, but presumably also for having tried to seduce others on the Hermannstadt Nagyszeben Sibiu market. They could have also been Austrian transmigrants under Herrnhuter influence. But how did the report get to this Viennese court? Similar to the case of 2 years later, I could only guess. Yeah. And similar to the case 2 years later, I can only guess the local magistrate of Hermannstadt related the case to Chamber Councillor Baron Dietrich Stein. So, okay. Dietrich Stein was a representative of the chamber, the court chamber, and it is not a problem being kept in arrestation. This was probably a proposal of court councillor, later Transylvanian Chancellor Gábor Bethlen, the late namesake of the great principal of Transylvania, who had embraced the Anabaptists about 1.5 centuries ago. That meant that the women should have admitted their status as native Transylvanians or Austrian transmigrants. In the first case, they have the right to convert to any accepted religions in Transylvania, but under inspection of the Catholic clergyman. We know that the longest religious education lasted 12 years. Their livelihood in prison cost 9,007 gulden. These persons were starved and suffered greatly under the removal of their children, and were also visited 3 times by the Transylvania Roman Catholic Bishop Baron Bajtai, and Baron Bajtai, and so this started the whole case, and I started the whole case with the location of Pater Delphini to Alvin's 1764. Thank you for